Today I'm sitting here with Stephen Birch, and we will be talking about your new book or newly published book, Restoring Order in Health and Chinese Medicine. Stephen, I see that it was published 11 years ago in the first edition. Now the second edition came out. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we released the book in 2014, and over the next few years, we ran into some problems with the publisher. And starting a number of years ago, the book became unavailable. And I've been thinking about how to make it available again because we think it was a quite useful book. And we approached Oren Kivity at Sayoshi Books, and has agreed to republish it for us.
Great. And now it's available again um, for everyone to read. There are three authors who are involved in the book. Can you talk? I mean, it's you
Well,
and two others. Can you talk about them?
Well, the book project started because my friend Miguel Cabrera from Barcelona had this idea to do an edited book about Qi and the meridians. So he asked me for advice on who to contact, which scholars will be good to approach, people like Paul Unsholt or Vivian Lowe, etc. Which scholars will be good to approach for contributing to the book. And we approached all of these scholars, and they all wrote back saying, sorry, been there, done that, don't want to do it again, thank you. So after a while, we realized the book project is very interesting, but maybe we have to do the work because all this newly available scholarship is available. These translations of historical texts, archaeological findings, there was much more information available. So Miguel and I decided to start the book, and we realized it's a lot of work. And because it was a lot of work, we decided to approach our mutual friend, Manuel Rodriguez, who also was from Barcelona, and asked him to join us because we knew he was a hard worker and would be very good at helping us get the book on track. So the Miguel is a long-standing Tai Chi teacher and acupuncturist. Manuel was a acupuncturist, Chinese herbal medicine practitioner and teacher, and also had a background in various Japanese martial art disciplines.
Great. And in the second edition, has anything changed in comparison to the first edition, or is it just a reprint of the first edition?
It's the 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 book itself is a reprint, but we decided we wanted to add something without having to go through all the extra work of re-editing and rewriting the book. So we've written a short essay that when you purchase the book, you get this short essay. Um, uh, Miguel wrote a very interesting piece about looking at the Chinese language descriptions of what kind of body mind state is necessary or is sought in order to make our actions more effective in the world. And he wrote this really short, brilliant piece about this. And I am thinking I can't really top that. So my contribution was a explanation of the background of where this idea comes from as a kind of evolution from what we already did in the book.
Okay.
So there's a short essay that's a giveaway. We hope at some point to do another edition or another extended book beyond this.
The title of the complete title of the book is Restoring Order in Health and Chinese Medicine, Studies of the Development and Use of Qi and the Channels. Who is this book written for?
Well, we wanted it. Our initial target was the acupuncture, Chinese medicine, traditional East Asian medical community who read English. And we, of course, were also hoping that people in who are not in the community, maybe more people in the medical field who have an interest in this field, um, who might be interested in it because we used a more academic approach for some of the chapters so that you could see we weren't being fanciful. Um, Part of the purpose of the book was to clarify what happened, how did acupuncture develop, what were the concepts of qi and the meridians, how did those concepts develop? Why did they develop the way they did? And once they developed, what did different groups of people use? How did they use those ideas? What did they do with them? And we thought that this kind of approach would have a broad appeal.
So you go back all the way to what, the Han Dynasty to look at
Oh
these
no,
developments?
no. In order to understand what happened in the Han Dynasty, you have to look at where those ideas come from. So we're tracing back through the Warring States period and so on, the periods prior to the Han Dynasty, to understand what motivated people to start prioritizing a concept like qi, what motivated people to start developing a concept like the Jingmai or the meridians. And then once we understand that motivation, what was the original descriptions about what you do using the terms qi or the meridians and how you use that for treating patients. I will address this a little bit in my short presentation in a few minutes.
Exactly. You will give a short presentation about the book, but you just now said it's also for people to understand A, how acupuncture came about, the
Mhm.
concept of qi came about, but what's the practical aspect of the book
Um,
for practitioners?
When we go to acupuncture school, we focus on learning and memorizing all of these theories and these diagnostic observations and the point locations and the prescriptions and so on that come with that, how to diagnose and treat patients. And as beginners, we all would like to improve our skills. And it improving our skills is more than just memorizing more material. That's easy. Everybody can memorize more material. Improving our skills is also it requires a certain kind of focus, a certain kind of understanding. One of the themes that we have in the book is how did in early China, how did they describe the work of a beginner versus the work of somebody who has a good understanding about what they're doing versus the work of the true experts, somebody who's really what they call in Chinese terms the superior person or the superior practitioner. And so in the book, it gives a roadmap for how to understand this, but also how to move forward. What kind of things would be needed in order to improve your skills? And after we'd written the more academic chapters describing these themes, we also added several chapters looking at describing a number of very practical things that you can do, that you can try to enhance and improve your skills. So that you can improve your ability to work with a needle and influence the patient in a more direct way.
So basically, it's a roadmap for the novice to the expert
Right.
working with qi. So it's good for novices, and it's also good for people with more experience that want to deepen their knowledge and understanding and experience of qi.
And one of the key themes is understanding about the kind of the body-mind state of the practitioner, because it's not just an intellectual thing, it's a very, very practical thing. The language of describing things in China, like for example, the nature of knowledge today in the modern scientific world is one of we objectively describe things so that we have an understanding of the nature of things. But in classically, historically in China, the nature of knowledge was always much more practical. Things were described in ways that give the ability of to understand how to act more effectively. So we one of the things that we did in the book was we looked at the concept of chi or the meridians, and we kept coming back to this more practical application, this more practical understanding of these ideas. So with that in mind, we think that we've made it easier for people to understand this roadmap for how to move forward, how to improve your skills. Imagine someone learning to play the piano and they want to get better. So they reach a certain level with their teacher. Now they need another teacher to improve their skills a bit further. And what's different between someone who's playing quite well versus somebody who's playing very well versus the person who's able to do a concert level performance. And
So I understand this correctly. It's a very practical
yeah,
book also.
in this sense, it's not about what point do you needle for this or and you know the details of making a diagnosis, but it's really focused on enhancing our ability to improve our practical skills.
Okay, interesting. So you mentioned it already. You have a small presentation about the book to introduce the book.
Yes,
Would you share that with us and
sure.
lead us through it?
The you can see the book in the top corner here,
Yes.
right? Okay. Um, Essentially, what we found when we were trying to understand the history and nature and origins of the concept of qi and the meridians was it really comes from the Warring States period. In China, the Warring States period was everything was very chaotic. There was a lot of violence. The society was very disordered. And during that period, there were a number of efforts to try to restructure things, to try to create a better leadership, to try what's involved in helping develop somebody to be a better person, a superior person, so that they will be more effective at leading, create more order in society. And for example, we've all heard about Confucius and his ideals about what would be involved to be a better person. And as a better person, if you follow the rules, you follow the rites and so on, the rituals, then you can help restore order in the country. There were other themes following Confucius, like Mencius and so on. And as a distinction from that, you also had, for example, the Taoist efforts to try to what's involved in creating a better person. And this leads to efforts towards self-cultivation and so on. And in this process of um, trying to trying to create more order in society by describing how to be a better person, how to act more effectively and in a better way in the world, the concept of qi became really important. There are even texts that focus on the concept of qi from a kind of a moralistic and virtue perspective, which is very interesting. So uh, at a certain point, especially with the efforts coming from the different Taoist type texts, qi becomes important in self-cultivation, and as it starts to become important in self-cultivation, it takes on more of a physiological role. And um, uh, coming out of that period of the Warring States, you come to the Han Dynasty. And in the Han Dynasty, acupuncture was introduced using these needles. And here we have an example of the kind of needles that were described in the Ling Shu. Needles were described in order for a person to be able to regulate the qi of another person. Up until the Han Dynasty, the idea of trying to restore order in society by improving the individual or using self-cultivation techniques to improve the individual, enhance the individual to be a better person, focused only on one person acting on themselves. And with the what you see with the advent of the Neijing is the idea of how to do that to another person, how to restore order by regulating the qi of a patient, how to restore order in the patient's body. And this is where needles were introduced. And during this time, they also introduced the concept of the Jingmai, the meridians. As most of you are probably familiar, many of you listening, the meridians are also an extension of earlier constructs called the Mai or the vessels. There are different. The meridian didn't appear out of the blue. It built on earlier constructs, But by the time of the Neijing, the meridians are very structured, highly organized ideas. Um, the meridians were focused on helping regulate the functions. If you apply needles to the meridians, it helps by tonifying and draining the meridians that are excess or deficient. It helps regulate the movement of qi in the 12 meridians, which in turn helps regulate and improve the conditioning and functioning of the systems inside the body. And one of the things that you find in the Neijing is with the introduction of these metal tools, the needles, the jun, in order to regulate the qi of the patient, they there was a clear recognition that, well, people who are reading the book, some of them are going to be beginners, and some of them are already going to know what they're doing. So you get this two-level description in the Neijing of action. One for the beginner, which focuses more on mechanical things that you can do with needles, like needling with the flow, using the breath of the patient, closing the hole, etc. And then there's also the action of using a needle to influence the chi of a patient, which a superior practitioner is capable of doing. And the language of the superior practitioner is one more of directly acting on and through the chi of the patient, as opposed to using a needle to influence the chi of a patient. And this is this language of the superior practitioner. What we find is there are several passages in the Neijing that draw from the self-cultivation literature. The superior practitioner is somebody who has reached a certain state of body-mind that enables them or allows them to act more effectively, more directly with the chi. And the language of that person is similar to the language that you find in the self-cultivation literature, especially a text called the Neye, which is a chapter from the Kwanzaa. And this text focused on exclusively on what kind of exercises, what kind of diet, what kind of breathing exercises, what kind of mental exercises, what kind of emotional self-regulation, all a variety of different techniques to try to improve yourself so that you can become a superior person. And what you find is this very important statement in the Neya, which clearly influenced the Neijing, and that is that essentially, as it says in red here, qi cannot be halted by force. It can be secured by inner power. It cannot be summoned by speech, but can be welcomed by awareness. And this concept of awareness, or the E, is the Neya essentially is, in a very simple way, we could say it describes a variety of techniques to create this cultivated state of body-mind. And once you have this cultivated state of body-mind, it allows you to work with the chi more directly. Okay. And the practitioner needs therefore to develop the language of needling. For the superior practitioner, is the practitioner needs this kind of old developed body-mind state in order to act more effectively with the chi. The language of needling focuses very clearly on if you are interested in regulating the chi of the patient, using these more technical skills, these more difficult to learn skills, the Ling Shu quite clearly articulates it's to do with this cultivated state of body mind called the E. And when we look at this language of needling in the in the Neijing, what we find is that when we needle, we need to create the chi needs to arrive with the needling. And one of the things that we notice is that the language of needling, um, when the chi arrives, uh, who feels the chi? It's not the patient. Um, for example, in the Neijing, in the Su and Lingshu, the term duchy is used 6 times. It's obviously a very important idea to do with needling, but it doesn't say who feels the qi. Instead, in the Neijing, you find the concept of qi zhi, or which is the arrival of qi. This is the language of what happens when you do this, the qi arrives. And this language is it's the work of the superior practitioner. And once the chi arrives, then therefore you must do this immediately. And there is a very clear focus on the ability to act with and on the chi of a patient, and how to maximize the effectiveness of that. The timing of your actions is very important. And we think that there isn't time to ask the patient, did you feel it? We think that most likely it's to do with what the practitioner feels. And then a couple of centuries later, the Nanjing is published, and the Nanjing has the first, in chapter 78 of the Nanjing, it has the first clear articulation of who feels the qi. It's the practitioner in their left hand. And so the language of needling is focused on these very subtle, difficult things that require a lot of training, a lot of either specialized training or many years of clinical practice. For example, Denmei Shudo, in one of his books, described how it took him about 30 years to figure this stuff out on his own. Or you can find special training, special methods for learning these things. And there are also very simple things that you can do to enhance your ability to acquire these skills more quickly. So once this model of medical practice of using the needles to influence the meridians to regulate the chi of the patient, once this model developed, you see over time lots of different ways that people use it. The meridians and the chi takes on many different kind of understanding, different meanings. There are some that understand acupuncture is just a way of regulating the chi of the patient. So we use only needles to do this, needling the meridians. And then there are herbal medicine practitioners for whom the meridians take on a secondary role. And the concept of regulating the chi is applied differently because herbs act differently on the body. And then there are those that blend these things. So we find over time that these constructs were adopted and used in many different ways. But one of the things that's very curious when we look at the concept of qi, um, since what we find in the historical literature is that there are statements that everything is made of qi, it's really nothing special. How can it be special if everything is made of qi? And one of the problems that we have as Westerners is not understanding enough about that early history and how these ideas evolved over time. We tend to idolize, if you will. We tend to put on a pedestal the construct of chi, and we tend to make it something special when actually it's not really special. What's special is understanding how to act more effectively and the skills that go into being more efficient and more effective in our actions. I think that's really what's more special, not the nature of chi itself, because chi is everything. How can it be something special? And so figuring out how to do these things more effectively can make you a better practitioner. It can allow you to perform more effectively. And one of the quotes that we found in the historical literature, that several of us, different chapters of the book, quote this and talk about what it means. Zhuangzi has this statement about um, uh, acting. And he has this, I'm just paraphrasing here from several sentences. Make your will one. Don't listen with your ears. Listening with your ears is the work of the beginner. No, don't listen with your ears. listen with your mind. Listening with your mind is a more developed way of observing and acting in the world. This is the work of somebody who knows what they're doing, the experienced person. No, don't listen with your mind, listen with your chi. If everything in the world is made of chi and you're able to tune in and use your chi to focus on that, then you become one with it. There's no longer a separation between you and the thing that you're acting on. And this is the kind of way of thinking that we found in the historical literature that we think is influenced the way acupuncture was described in these two levels of acting, the work of the beginner, the work of the experienced or the expert. So that's pretty much my presentation. Um, I hope that makes a few things clearer. I'm sure that leads you to a few questions.
Yes, thank you very much. It does make things a lot clearer. Um, if I try to summarize it for me and maybe the listeners, the book first will enhance my understanding of the concept of qi, where it came from, how the channels developed,
Mm-hmm.
how acupuncture developed in the concept of qi or integrating the concept of qi. And then the book also helps me as a practitioner to become more skilled at working with my own qi. Do I understand that correctly, or would you like to?
Well, it working with my own chi, in one sense, yes, but it's more than that. Um, yes, in my body I have my chi, but the universe is made of chi. It's everywhere. So I'm not only working with my own chi, how to work more directly with the chi. It's more. It's not limited to my body. You
And
understand?
and with
So
a clear focus on being a practitioner.
exactly. So, one of the things that in the book we focused on how these constructs are important for um, as practitioners of traditional East Asian medicine, how that might influence our work as a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, an herbal medicine practitioner, how those things might enhance our ability to observe, gather information from patients, how we analyze the data from patients, and how we act more effectively with patients. But it's part of daily life. It's not so much focused on in the book, but the same theme extends into how to act more effectively, whether it be in a medical context or in a non-medical context.
Okay. Um, you mentioned in the presentation the Neye as one of the sources you used.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit more about the sources that you did use and where you got the information for this? Because you said it's pre-Han
Right.
time that
So
you used.
so there's a text called the Guanzi. The first part, the earliest chapters of the Guanzi were written probably starting late 4th century BC. And but the Guanza is a collection of pieces that were written over a number of centuries, and there are several chapters in the Guanza. Three of them are called the art of the mind. They're less they're about how to cultivate the state of mind in order to be able to do things more effectively, but it's not so clear how to use that information practically. But then there's a chapter in the Guanza called the Neye, which dates from the late 4th century, early 3rd century BC. That's really this practical, like a number of different kind of exercises and procedures you can follow. So that's clearly an important text, and I and several other authors and contributors to the book went back to the Neye repeatedly because we found there's some important passages there. But also, um, since the 1970s, archaeological digs have found a number of other texts that were unknown. For example, there's the Mawang Dui archaeological findings and Zhangjiashan archaeological findings from the 70s and 80s. And within that, you find a number of texts that were applied for more pre-Neijing kind of medical applications, but also texts on self-cultivation and how to improve yourself. There was also a text called the Wuxing. That's literally the 5 phases. Wuxing, which was completely unknown. This is the first time this text was discovered that in particular focuses on that it introduces the concept of qi in the concept of, in the context of developing a virtuous person that's capable of being a better ruler. And you find in these early language descriptions, this these more recently available texts for which there's good scholarly translations and investigations of these early texts that were available to us when we wrote the book. You find descriptions of um, how does qi act in the world. For example, there's this construct of Ganying, a kind of resonance. They use this metaphor of, like, for example, if you put 12 violins next to each other and you pluck one string when they're all correctly tuned, if you pluck the string on one of the violins, it makes the same string on the other violins vibrate. This kind of resonance effect. And you find this language of resonance is very important for how the superior person can influence the people around him to create more order, a better state of the country, and so on. And what we found is that acupuncture was borrowing this language about how we act. If we create this greater state of order in ourselves, it has this influence on the patient. And this is really interesting. It's
Yeah.
worthy of a lot of further investigation, I think.
It definitely sounds very interesting, and I'm very happy that Sayoshi Books put this new edition or this second print out. Um, is the book available already now?
It's already available. If you search for the book Restoring Order and Health in Chinese Medicine, you can find on Amazon, for example, the old version from the Spanish publisher at a rather crazy price. But that one is unavailable. That Spanish publisher is no longer functioning. Or if you scroll down, you'll find the book that I showed, the new edition.
Okay.
It's
It's
now
available
available
on Amazon
on
and
Amazon
to a normal price.
as a normal price, as a
Okay.
Kindle or as a paperback.
Okay. Already.
One thing I'd like to mention, because I'm proud of the fact that I did this, is as many of you may already know, I'm also a researcher. And I've spent decades thinking about what, how do you go about scientifically investigating something like chi or a meridian? How do you do valid scientific studies? And I collared a good colleague of mine, Mark Bovey in the UK, and I got him to work with me on a chapter in the book. This is for the scientists who are listening to this, a chapter in the book about what what are the steps necessary if you wish to conduct a valid scientific study about qi or something like qi or the meridians. I just want to throw that out. I think because nobody else has ever published on this before, and I think that was a really novel contribution for scientists as well. That's
Yeah,
very practical.
and you saying that, I think the whole book is like a very fundamental investigation into Qi. It starts with the whole history and it
Mhm.
ends with the scientific look
Yeah.
at how to research it, that chapter.
And then ends with these practical chapters where there's a bunch of pictures of Miguel and Manuel demonstrating very simple techniques that you can do that follow the language that we encountered as we were doing our research.
Great. Looking forward to reading it. And thank you very much for introducing the book,
Well, and
for
thank you
talking,
for asking me. Yes.
and I wish you a good day.
Yep. And you. Thank you.